This is Lorenzo, and this is the training routines taxonomy video series, lesson number 10. It's on the sixth routine, the racetrack. It's a gymnastics routine focused on core development in the anterior chain. So think abdominals, hip flexor. It's been designed to help you achieve 3 of the 30 fitness benchmarks, one in mobility, one stability, and one strength. And we're going to use the MSP exercise protocol to help you achieve that using only 5 exercises. See you inside. The racetrack is one of 4 core chain routines. And as we can see to the left of our matrix, the routine type is a track, so not a complex. A track we know is a gymnastics routine. It's focused on helping you master compression strength, which means we're dealing with core development in the anterior chain, as we can see here with the leg raise. Now, as we already know, an exercise protocol is only as good as its ability to fulfill its objectives. But in order to have objectives, it needs a training plan. So let's take a look at the objectives, strategies, and tactics as it relates to the racetrack. As previously mentioned, this routine has 3 objectives. The first is to help you achieve a benchmark of hamstring mobility, the Pike fold, followed by a benchmark of core stability, the V-sit. Your goal as a recreational male athlete is 15 consecutive seconds, and for the girls, 6 seconds as a minimum to demonstrate competence in this position. Finally, the third benchmark is one of dynamic compression strength, the leg raise itself, as we can see it over here. For the guys, your aim is 6, and for the girls, your aim is 3 consecutive hanging straight leg raises. Moving on to our strategy, or the minimum mobility, stability, and strength requirements for us to achieve our objectives. Well, as we can see, we need hamstring mobility, core stability, as well as dynamic straight leg compression strength. We therefore need to make sure that whatever exercises we select to help us achieve our objectives, we need to spend enough time doing closed hip anterior pelvic tilt mobility work. We need core compression or posterior pelvic tilt stability, static holds, as well as spend time practicing the leg raise itself with core compression, hip flexion, strength drills. Finally, and as for our tactics or the ideal training space and equipment we need to implement our strategy, we're going to need an open training zone, as you will see in a second, store bar zone, as we can see there. As for equipment, we're going to need a mat and parallel bars. Okay, so with our objective and strategy in mind and our tactics in place, we're finally ready to see what the MSP exercise protocol looks like as it applies to the racetrack. Okay, so for our first 2 exercises in the mobility category, serving as a warm-up, we have a closed hip Pike fold hamstring stretch, which is focused on our first benchmark. For our second exercise, a closed hip exercise as well, the supine trap, a upper trapezius stretch. For our stability complex, for our third exercise, we have the open hip body lever. The body lever is also known as the dragon flag, but it's an advanced movement, so we're going to need a progression. The ideal progression for the body lever is going to be the hollow body. For our fourth exercise, a closed hip exercise, the V-sit, focus on our second benchmark directly itself. We have, of course, V-sit progressions, the L-sit and its progressions. And for our fifth and final exercise in the power category, following the 30 rep rule, we have the leg raise itself, as well as its specific progressions. Okay, so now let's quickly take a look at what each of these exercises look like in sequence so you can get a sense of the flow of the routine. But remember, as I said before, the purpose of these videos is not to serve as a specific tutorial to each of these exercises. Rather, it's to help you understand the relationship between the exercises we've selected, the sequence they follow, and how they help us fulfill our strategy to help you achieve your objectives. Okay, so our first exercise, we have the Pike fold. The name comes from closed pike in gymnastics or forward fold from yoga. I combine them for the Pike fold, but it is a hamstring stretch, as we can see here. It's a closed hip hamstring stretch. Now, there are so many different ways to improve hamstring mobility. You don't necessarily have to pick exactly this exercise. The point is to ensure that whatever you select is that you spend enough time in a closed hip anterior pelvic tilt position to improve hamstring mobility. For example, and another hamstring stretch that I like is the supine lockouts that you can do instead of the Pike fold or in addition to. What's unique about the lockouts that you can work on one leg at a time, so you can work on certain potential imbalances or deficits. And as I said, you can do it in place of the pike fold or in addition to it, because you don't only have to do 2 mobility drills. You can do as many hamstring drills as you like in the beginning. It really depends on you. It depends on time. It depends on your current level of mobility. Some people need to spend more time on hamstring mobility, some people less. So you don't have to do 2, you can do more. However, the reason I have 2 is because they're actually targeting different muscle groups. The pike fold is targeting the hamstrings, whereas you'll see in the following exercise, the supine trap is targeting the upper trapezius, also known as the plow pose. Speaking of plow pose, our next exercise is what we call the supine trap. So once you're done with your pike fold stretches, lasting anything between 5 and 10 minutes, again, the larger the muscle group, typically the more time you'll spend, you will move on to the plow pose or the supine trap, focus on stretching the upper trapezius muscles, which together with the pike fold allows us to stretch the entire posterior chain. So upper traps as well as hamstrings. Something that most people don't think about or don't realize at all is the fact that greater levels of anterior core strength depends largely on greater posterior chain mobility. Much in the same way that, as we saw in the previous track, that if you want greater adductor mobility for the middle split, we need to also strengthen the antagonistic muscles, the abductors, on the opposite side. This is why we target both the hamstrings, the lower part of the posterior chain, as well as the upper trapezius as the upper part of the posterior chain. Together, the supine trap and pike fold serving as our mobility complex, a minimum of 2 mobility drills, shouldn't take longer than 20 minutes to help us fulfill our closed hip anterior pelvic tilt mobility strategy to help us achieve our first benchmark. Moving on to our third exercise in our stability complex, we have an open hip body lever, also known as the dragon flag, as we can see it over here. The body lever is an advanced straight body core stability drill. So for the beginners, we recommend starting with the hollow body hold. Both the body lever and hollow body are in an open hip or a straight body position, because the focus here, unlike the L-sit and V-sit, the closed hip core compression strength drills, is to help you to strengthen the abdominals with the hip flexor and the quads all in a chain. This is known as tensegrity, which you can think of as integrity of tension across the entire chain that serves as the foundation for our closed hip core stability work. Speaking of closed chain, our fourth exercise is a closed chain core stability drill. It is the V-sit itself, as we can see it over here. The V-sit is an advanced progression to the L-sit. That's why it's the benchmark. And as you can see here, once you've actually achieved the benchmark, your benchmark becomes part of your training. We recommend that you first start with your L-sit and your L-sit progressions, like the L-sit tuck here, as you can see performed by my mom. We recommend that you work towards at least a 30-second L-sit in the tuck position. Then you can move on to the following progression, which is a low L-sit, and from the low L-sit to the L, and then eventually you can start working on your V-sit. Together with the body lever, you have a closed hip and an open hip, or a straight body and a bent body core stability drill, lasting no longer than 5 minutes to help you fulfill your core compression in a posterior pelvic tilt stability strategy to help you unlock your V-sit. Okay, so once we're done with our mobility and stability preparatory work, we can finally start working on our core compression and hip flexion strength by focusing on practicing our leg raises following the 30 rep rule. Okay, so for those of you who don't know how the 30 rep rule works, this is how to think about it. Imagine you only had 30 reps to spend to make progress. If you select an exercise that's too easy, you may not make progress. If you select something that's too difficult, you may make progress, but it takes very long. So there's a trade-off between progress and time and maybe even a focus on different types of skills. For example, there are 6 multiples of the 30 rep rule. You could do 1 set of 30. You could do 2 sets of 15. You could do 3 sets of 10. You could do 5 sets of 6. You could do 6 sets of 5. And you can do 10 sets of 3. Now let's think about this for a second. In order for you to be able to do 30 reps in one go, you'd have to pick an exercise that is relatively easy for you. Like, as we can see here, the tuck is for me. So we could say here tuck as a very easy variation. And as a result, if I do 30 reps in a row, it'll only take me 2 minutes. On the other side of the spectrum, if I selected a exercise progression where I could only do 3 reps at a time, by definition, that's going to be a very difficult movement for me. So that might be the hanging straight leg raise as we see it over here. However, this will now take me 20 minutes at minimum to complete, simply because I have to take at least 9 sets of rest. So the more sets I break it into, the longer it's going to take. So 2 times 15 would be around 4 minutes. 3 times 10 would be 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and so on. And as we saw, if I want to do less sets with more reps, I have to pick a progression that is easier. Finally, we can also see that if I selected the tuck, it's going to be more focused on endurance since I'm doing 30 reps. Whereas the hanging straight leg raise, it's more focused on strength because I'm doing less reps. And so what I really like about the 30 rep rule is that you get to spend your 30 reps any way you see fit, depending on how you feel, your fitness level, how much time you have. So for example, let's say you're in a rush, you're probably going to focus on 2-minute endurance as opposed to, let's say you had a lot of time, and the more time you have, the more you can spend it on focusing on more difficult lifts. So in summary, the racetrack is a hamstring mobility drill, followed by the supine trap, a straight body core stability drill, a bent body core stability drill, and finally 30 leg raises.